Appreciate it. Yeah, so first off, thank you so much to the art project folks. It's a ton of work to put on a festival. So I really appreciate you doing this because as I just said before this, that there's not a lot going on in the world because of COVID. So thank you for spending the time to do this and staying up super late. But yeah, I'm excited to have an amazing group of panelists here. These folks cover everything from theater and sound art to live performance, film, video games. So anything and everything that is composition and technology. So I'll let them introduce themselves, but let's pass it off to Edna. You can introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Edna Longoria. I compose for media and concert music. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. And Angelo, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Angelo Hart. I do a little composition from a little bit of jazz, R&B, classical, a little bit of everything. I've done film scoring and different stuff like that as well. So just happy to be here and to listen to everybody talk and speak.
Yeah, thanks, man. And Roc Lee.
So my name is Roc Lee. I'm a composer / sound designer based in Washington, D.C. I do work in live theater and video games. Currently working on 2 games. One is called Sword Reverie, which is an anime JRPG in VR. That's going on early access in January. And I'm doing sound design for Cyberpunks, which is also a VR game that is a cyberpunk fighting game in VR.
Nice. And last but not least, Dr. Kennedy, Dr. Justin Leo Kennedy.
Please don't. Yeah, you don't have to call me Dr. Kennedy. It makes me feel like the least cool person in the room. Hi, everyone. I'm Justin. I am an electronic musician and sound artist. So I do a lot of like live performance with technology, synthesizers, Launchpad, stuff like that. And then I do like museum installations, like sound art installations and things like that. I've done a lot of other types of composition, but those are the things that I've done like primarily.
Cool. So for anybody who's joining us, please feel free to toss your questions in the chat and we'll try and hit those. And we have a lot of other things we're going to discuss, but again, thank all 4 of you for taking time out of your Saturday to do this. Edna, I want to start with you, and being somebody who's trained kind of classically, you've done, music for every chamber group, for all of the orchestras. How does working, in that linear format, how does that help inform kind of your work with film and commercial media?
That's a good question. I guess it helps more like in getting people that I know for later on to use to record my music. But now, how the projects, I usually do independent film stuff, so we don't have the budget to actually record, the actual ensembles, but getting to meet all these ensembles and things like that, kind of like have them on my list to hopefully later on, use them for that. And then, just being able to use the whole orchestra and just like that, and incorporating my voice in concert in film, which I'm still, I'm still trying to get there.
When you write for media, or even if it's just a chamber music live performance, do you start with pen and paper, or do you like start in the DAW? Like, what's your process in composing?
So when I started composing, technology was already, like Sibelius was a thing already. So I bought Sibelius, and that's how I started. So I only sketch like the big idea of what I want. I sit on the piano, but I have my laptop right next to me, and that's how I also think that, if I want to sketch, if I want to write the whole thing by hand and then later on put it on Sibelius, that just takes too much time, and there's no time for that. So I know some people like doing it by hand, but that's just too much work.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
No, I totally get it. I feel like there at least 10 years ago, maybe still, there was that dichotomy of like, you are either pen and paper or you are technology, and like the classical world has done a great job of kind of poo-pooing technology. But Angelo, of course, you come at this to an additional perspective from the jazz world that's been embracing technology like forever, from electric guitars to synthesizers. So I don't know, can you speak to us about that kind of side of things where it's always been embraced?
Yeah, man. Well, it's definitely true. So like, I mean, I love improvisation, that's a big part of my music. Justin was talking about sound design and sound art. So that was really what really started me to really think outside the box, combining acoustic and electronic music. Justin, you've actually been to one of my concerts out in Phoenix, I believe, at least, right? Where I had a sound artist, just create like a soundscape of sound, and then me, I would put my own improvisational touch on it, and whatnot. And I just dig that, And as far as just technology in my current day um, endeavors, I mean, it's a lot. I mean, especially during COVID, it's something that I really had to lean on because I really didn't really have a lot. I had my keyboard. I have a Juno DS Roland that I use. That's really all I had. So I had to.
Dude, you have a Juno though.
I know, right? I love my Juno. But so during COVID, like I really had to dig. So I bought another keyboard. I bought this Complete Control. I bought a new computer. Actually, a couple of I got a monitor. I didn't have any of this, dial stuff that I really had. So it really forced me to really to get in on electronics. Because I'm a purist. A lot of times when it comes to music, I just love acoustic. That's how I've been. So I really these last couple of years, so it really forced me to really dig into the electronic side of it and really forced me to get some of this equipment stuff, which I dig and I love it now, and I'm obsessed.
That kind of your focus, because in your latest album, In the Groove, I noticed that there was definitely a lot more electric kind of synthesizer sounds than there were in the first album. Was that purely because of COVID, or have you always been like, I want to try this?
Well, it was both, man. Like it was really both, because yeah. So because all my sounds were all different plugins and different MIDI stuff. Everything is MIDI, recorded MIDI. Besides the live drums, I had live drums sent in and stuff like that. But all my parts, the synth stuff, some horn stuff, some bass stuff was all on MIDI. So that's a mixture of me really wanting to do that and just me not really putting the effort into it. But COVID kind of forced my hand to it, and then once I got into it, it's like, oh my goodness, there's so many options, there's so much stuff I can do, like and then there's pros and cons to that. So it's a mixture of both for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like some of the times the VSTs and just the number of options can be overwhelming because anything is possible in MIDI. And like Roc, you do a lot in video games, and obviously you're working in a sound environment that non-linear, so much it can be possible. Maybe you could speak to that because you've also worked in theater, so working in the live environment, but also creating kind of soundscapes for a digital environment. I don't know, how have they informed each other? How does it inform your music?
Yeah, so I started doing live theater and I transitioned into video games. And I find that the two are actually pretty similar because in live theater, the way that the sound has to be triggered, you don't know when things are going to happen because it's always off of like either a line or what the actor is doing. And so while it is still linear, you know that this is first and this is second and this is third, you just don't know when they're going to happen. So that when you plan out your music track, you have to say like, okay, so this is the intro, and then if it gets to this point, then it should loop, and then you wait for when the next thing is going to happen, then you want it to trigger and then play the next thing. And so that translates very well to video games where it's you also don't know when things are going to happen. The only difference is it can go forwards, or it can go backwards. And at least the way that I was prepping my material, I was creating stems already for theater because that allows more flexibility for mixing. So if you create a track that's like strings and percussion and woodwinds and brass, then you can say like, oh, it sounds great in my studio, but like when I play it back in the room, the strings are too loud, so then I can bring the strings down. Or if the director says like, I don't really like that percussion, like, can you take it away? Then I could just mute it. And that provides a lot of flexibility when like actually teching the show. And that also like helps a lot in creating variation because then I can like I can prep a loop with maybe a stack of 8 different instruments, but only play like 3 during the first pass, and then in the second pass play a different set, and then I have an automatic variation without having to do extra work. And that also translated very well into doing video game stuff.
Yeah, I feel like for anybody who hasn't worked in video game stuff, it is actually rather accessible because Unity and Unreal Engine are free to start working with, and you can play with things like Wise, which I know, Roc, you use Wise, and I've used Fmod, which are kind of these systems to create nonlinear music or sound or whatever, and have it triggered by certain code. And so, yeah, it's really interesting to kind of totally look at music in a completely different way. Justin, I know that you've been working with technology for a really long time, especially kind of synthesis. So I'm curious about, because I've heard your orchestral works. I know you've done, the big sweeping kind of classical works. And what do you think has changed, and now that you're teaching it, like in your understanding of how technology is working with music?
One of the things that's changed is I see a lot of students come in, and they're coming in using FL Studio. They're coming in using a lot of sound tools, and so they're teaching themselves in the same way that I think I don't want to presume, but I would imagine a lot of us have taught ourselves. Yeah. And so a lot of students are coming in having taught themselves, but there are certain things that they haven't had the chance to try yet. Like when we bring them in and we show them like an analog compressor, they're kind of like surprised and don't always know exactly what to do with it. And then once we explain, it's just like what you've used in FL Studio, then it's like a light bulb goes off. And so what I find is a lot of younger people, they can learn how to do this, at least in our program. We have a commercial music and audio production program, and they can learn how to do it quicker than I was able to learn how to do it, because they already have an idea of what a compressor basically does. Whereas with me, I had no idea what it did, and I had to really study to try to learn like how to use it and when I should use different ones, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of one of the main differences I see.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Well, I mean, that goes right into kind of setups. So I guess it's a question for everybody. What's your setup, and how has that changed? Let's look at it just from like now that you have to be home, like the COVID side of the world, right? Because Angelo, you were saying like you gained all of this equipment. So looking at it from that perspective, what are your setups like? How do you work day to day as a composer or a sound artist? That's for all of you. Anybody start?
Sure, I can jump in. But I will preface it by saying that this is my setup after having been doing this for a long time. Like it's grown over the years. So like when I started composing, the first thing that I bought was Finale 2003. That was like my first piece of music software. And I thought that I had to have an audio interface, so I got an M Audio Firewire 410, but I had a PC, so I couldn't even plug it in. So that was learning the hard way that like sometimes you don't need to buy some stuff. But now I have a PC that I built myself. It's a couple years old at this point, but it's an i7 67K with 64 gigs of RAM. I have 3 terabytes of hard drive storage on this machine, and I have a slave with another 4 terabytes of storage that I do VE Pro, Vienna Ensemble Pro to like host other sample libraries. And then I have Yamaha HS5 series with the sub, and I also use Sound Reference to do like the system tuning, which is super helpful even if you're using headphones. I found it.
Are you in a studio, or are you working from home?
So this is my home setup.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've acquired a lot of stuff over the years.
Totally. Anybody else?
I'd love to hear about Angelo's setup, because he's got that tasty Juno keyboard. So
yeah, so like I said, this is all stuff that I pretty much got pretty good deals on, and majority of the stuff I got within the last 2 years. So just keep that in mind. So I have my Juno which is plugged in and ready to go. I have what I have a monitor, which has been good to me for myself. I have for my DAW I use Ableton, which has been good. My interface I use a Scarlett 4i4, which has been pretty good to me. It's a very, very, I think I spent like how much it cost? Two something. It works very well for what I need to do. I have two different computers. I have a Microsoft Surface, which I'm on right now, and Dell XPS, both of which I got after COVID. So, and that stuff I feel like I had to get. My monitors, I use PreSonus ones. This is at home, and they work pretty good for me. I have a different monitor I use when I'm using Sibelius and stuff at the same time, so I can see stuff a little better. And I also have my Complete Control, which I use. Is very good with different synth sounds. It has great sounds. I mean, the library that comes with this from Native Instruments is pretty expansive. So there's really all I need, honestly, from that. Yeah, so that's my home setup, and it's pretty much everything that I need. Ableton has been good to me. Sibelius, which I use for my students and I use for my own work and stuff like that. So that's been very good as well. So yeah,
Edna,
pretty simple.
Edna, you're using Sibelius. What else are you using?
Yeah, so for concert music, I definitely use Sibelius. For film stuff, I use Logic. And like Roc Lee said, I wanted to get DP at the beginning, the digital performance, and I mentioned it. And then so my fiance bought it and I've never used it. It's been like, I have it on my computer, I just never used it because I got not good, but comfortable with Logic. And it takes time, right, to get to know the whole, So I was like, no, getting to learn something new. So I have it there. This is where I compose. I move my piano because it's right here, the keyboard, and then I have a MIDI here. I have my iMac. I have a second screen. I have my speakers, and then I have several sound libraries I use. My favorites, it's Omnisphere, obviously Complete. I have Spectrasonic for cool groups for scenes, and some real guitar stuff, sound libraries, East West, and those are the things that I use. Mm-hmm.
Justin?
Yeah, I guess I'll go last. I'll try not to ramble, but so I think what makes me in a unique position is I felt real similar to Edna, where it was like, this is what I'm good at, and I'm going to keep using it, and this is my workflow, and that was before I was a professor, I worked at a startup company called Ball2 Studios, and we made like virtual reality applications and virtual reality video games, and we also made sound installations for like museums. Like we did one for a children's museum. And I had my workflow, right? I liked using Reaper, I liked using Ableton, and I liked using Max MSP. Those were the softwares I really enjoyed using. If you don't know what those are, Reaper is a digital audio workstation. I know all of you know, but for anyone who's watching who doesn't know, Reaper is a digital audio workstation that's really affordable. It gets used surprisingly often in the video game industry, and it's affordable. It's only $60, and you can do a 60-day trial. So it's really nice. Roc uses it. Yeah, the Reaper gang.
Me too. Yeah.
I use Ableton because I perform live a lot. And I don't know if Angelo feels the same way, but like I trust Ableton the most when I perform live because they prioritize the tempo engine. So what that means is like I've had other DAWs like have issues with the tempo engine when I'm performing live. And if I'm getting a click through my ear, and I need to play in time, especially on something like a Launchpad where I'm playing like an 808 kick drum or like something like that. Like if I'm playing basically like a drum machine kind of groove live, I need to be exactly on time, and I can't have any like latency interfere with the tempo engine. So I really like using Ableton, and then Max MSP is like a visual programming language. It's really commonly taught in electronic music programs in academia. It integrates with Ableton Live, so you can make your own plugins. You can make your own like MIDI. I don't know. You can hack Ableton kind of. But once I became a professor, and I'll wrap this up here, but once I became a professor, it kind of became my responsibility to learn a lot of stuff all the time. So that's a little stressful because students keep using new tools. And I'm like, well, what's that? Recently a student was like, oh, I use Cubase. And I was like, oh man, I don't use Cubase. And I had another student say like, oh, I use FL Studio. And I'm like, oh, I don't know FL Studio. And so then I have to like sit down over every break period. I just learned MuseScore. I felt like an old man. I was like, I don't know where everything is. I'm getting stressed out, and all my students use it, and they're telling me like, oh, it's the best. And I'm like, oh, I just want to go back to what I know, Finale and Sibelius, but I can't afford to do that. It's my job to know it. So yeah, learning new stuff, like Edna said, is super time consuming, and it can be real frustrating.
Oh my gosh. I just, I downloaded all of the things I could find. So I got Pro Tools, Digital Performer, Cubase, Ableton, just to do the 30-day free trial, because I just wanted to see what's it like. And I also got, Roc and I have talked about this, I got Dorico, and I couldn't get anything done in Dorico. Like I couldn't even get a 4-measure bar. I was like, how dumb am I that I can't get this stupid stuff to work? Which leads me to the next question, which is sometimes the stuff sucks. So let's talk about the issue of working with technology as opposed to just like a acoustic keyboard. Let's talk about that. How are we dealing with that as composers in your day-to-day life? Edna, you've talked about how you work with live instruments and live performers a lot. We all do. But I'd love to hear, how do you deal with those struggles of, yeah, good,
Yeah.
we're all struggling with that. But yeah, toss that question out to everybody. How are we dealing with that?
So, for example, Sibelius or any technology in a software, it's all robotic, right? So you can never get what you're, especially the rubato or like, retardandos. It's never what you're hearing in your head. So that's one thing that I really hate, because sometimes like, yeah, I hear it in my head, but I also want to kind of hear it first on Sibelius too. So I have to like mess with the tempos, and the score looks super dumb because there's all these changes of tempo just to make sure it kind of sounds a little bit more humane, So that's one thing, that it's never gonna sound realistic. So yeah.
No, that's so true. Anybody else with fighting technology day to day?
Well, I would say that like, and this goes sort of maybe with like one of your later questions, but like, I think it's important to remember that like technology is a tool. So it should work for you. Like and right now, nowadays, there are so many options, like it's overwhelming. So, and for every piece of software, you can find somebody who like loves it and somebody who hates it. So it's as much a matter of like the personality and workflow of the tool and how it fits you. Because I've tried Cubase, I've tried Studio One, I've tried Logic, I've tried Digital Performer, I've tried all of them, and like and Reaper is just the one that like fits my personality, so I use it for music, I use it for sound. And I started with Finale, but like the workflow of Dorico, I just love that workflow, and so like it just really works for me. But you don't have, like, if it doesn't work for you, you don't have to use it. Like there are other things that will accomplish the same task. So don't feel like you have to be boxed into this because everybody uses it. There are some rare cases where you do have to learn it because that is what people have been stuck in. One example of that is Pro Tools. If you're working in film, like there's no way around that. Like people just use Pro Tools because it was the first, and they started using it and they've been using it for like half a decade. So getting anybody to change from that is like is almost impossible.
I feel similar about Finale. Like Finale is one where if you're going to get into like copyist work or sheet music preparation, a lot of these companies, they still use Finale, and they may want a Finale file from you if you're going to hire them to do like parts for you. And so that can be, or they might want Sibelius. Like those are the two that have been around. I'd also jump in and say that like in dealing with, like Tim's initial question is like, started with a statement like technology sucks. How do you deal with it? So like I am by no means a computer programmer, and I don't want to pretend like I am, but in my old job, I had to write some code. and it was like really hard for me. I had to write like some stuff in C# for Unity. So if anyone here has ever used Unity gaming engine, I think Roc and Tim have both used it quite a bit, or at least it sounds like it. And like sometimes you just have to tell the gaming engine to do something, like even if it's just to trigger a sound. And so one of the things that like doing that really did for me is, and I tell all my students this, is I developed this mentality of like never let the computer win. Like it will work. Like I will make it work, and it doesn't have a choice. Whatever it takes, I'm gonna make the thing do, because I paid that money, right? It's like my computer. I paid thousands of dollars for all of this. It's gonna work. No ifs, ands, or buts. So I always tell my students, don't have like a defeatist attitude where you're just like, oh, I give up. No, like don't give up. Like force it to do what it's supposed to do. It's there for you. It's not the other way around. So that's how I deal with it. I sometimes get myself worked up and have to take a break. So take breaks, like go for a walk or something, clear your head, and then come back. And then troubleshooting is a little easier after you've calmed down, if you're like me and you get worked up.
Absolutely. Angelo, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. I'm not really technical or at all. Shoot, when it comes to electronics and stuff like that, that's never really been something that I've been good at all. And when it comes to like music, like I'm a like performer, musician, whatever first, as opposed to composer. So it was, something that I had to really transition to. Edna spoke about the, getting emotion out of electronics. How sometimes it can be missing, and I think that's the problem sometimes I have. But like Justin said, man, it's just you just do it until it feels right. Like trial and error is something I really had to really work through a lot. Just trying to figure stuff out and just trying to get the sound that I want. There's so many different sounds and different levels and different blah blah blah, different effects I can put on different stuff. So it's just, for me, it was just a matter of just trial and error. But yeah, just because I'm not really savvy at all, but it's something I had to force myself to do. And then I felt a lot more comfortable with it. So yeah.
Well, and everybody's kind of touched on this topic, which I think it's super important, which is inequity in our industry. And we tend to always, well, not always, we should focus a lot on the lack of diversity and lack of opportunities for a lot of people. But one that I think that is not covered often is the financial aspect, and how this is a crazy expensive industry to work in a lot of the time. And if you want to live in LA, that's expensive just in of itself. So let's talk about that. How do you do this job on a budget? And I know we all have feelings about this, so I'd love to get all of your input on this, because I think we've all felt that FOMO, right, on Black Friday when Spitfire Audio has their massive sale, and you're like, yeah, I need that new string sound, which, don't get me wrong, Spitfire Audio is incredible and their sounds are terrific. But, how do we deal with that as composers in this day and age?
So, Zard, if I go first on this one. So I have an affordable software for producers and musician document that I'll link again in this chat. I promote it a lot, but it's not because I'm trying to glorify my name. It's because I'm really passionate about free software, and I'm really passionate about like people not paying what they can't afford to pay. Because I know that for me, I went through some really hard times, like super hard times financially, where like I was barely able to like get groceries, and it felt like I was at such a disadvantage. And I see that in my students a lot, and it like just breaks my heart. So I really care a lot about them having access to tools. So I'll put in the chat here the document. That document has a bunch of free audio plugins, a bunch of free sample libraries. It has like mobile phone apps, which is like a free mobile phone app. This is Roc Lee noise, so you can make beats on it. And I love to show that to my students because I want them to be able to like get into this. And what I always suggest they do, and I was saying this a little bit earlier before we got started, is I suggest that they like try out a lot of free tools, and whichever one they really start to get into, once, like, if you find out what you're really into and then you use it, the free version, until you get to this point where you feel limited by the fact that it's the free version, and you feel like, okay, now this is the thing I want to buy that's going to help me. Because, like, Roc was saying, like, sometimes you purchase something and then you discover, like, oh, I didn't really need or even want this, and that makes me sad. Like, people should have access to things. Like, everybody should be able to come in and participate. So that's why I made that document with my colleague Gil Dory and my former student Gabe Spivey, who's an amazing producer, and amazing engineer. And so, anyways, that's basically what I had to say. But use free stuff; it's there, and you can download free things. You don't have to pay and pay and pay to get started.
Yeah, I would say, like, again, like, these things are tools, and they exist to help realize what's in your head. So the most important thing that I found, like, in working is, like, the ideas and the music itself comes first. Like, if the composition is bad, no amount of, like, production value is going to make it good. So if I can't even, like, write the thing that I want it to be, then I can spend, like, thousands of dollars and it's not going to make a difference. And one of the things that I wish that I'd known, 10 years ago is that I need to like know what I want to achieve before, like, spending money. Because I've bought, like, sound libraries, and, like, I can't even use, like, 2% of its capability because I don't know how to program CCs, and I had to learn, like, how to do that. And some of these are, like, so deep, like, you can buy one and use it, like, for years before even, like, reaching the limitation. But then you sort of then, like, the new thing comes out and it's nice and shiny and, like, it kind of sounds good in the demo, and you, like, go and reach for it, and then you get it, but you still don't know how to use it. So yeah, like, I think there's so much that is achievable with the free stuff, and I would say, like, definitely learn how to use the free stuff first, because all of the fancy stuff is the same thing, really, just with more money behind it, like, with better recording setups, or, like, maybe to record more articulations, or it's a specific algorithm in this compressor or specific algorithm in this reverb. But the way that you use them is the same way that you use, like, the free stuff. So, like, learn how to use it first, and then you will realize, like, oh, this thing can't achieve the sound that I want, so I need to find something that will achieve the sound that I want. And you also have to spend a lot of time, like, kind of listening and realizing, like, what the differences are, which the more you work in it, then the more you know what to listen for. So you also have to kind of, like, know what you're listening for before, like, you actually get something, which, as I've worked with sample libraries more, and as I've worked with plugins more, like, I'm starting to, like, actually hear the differences between, like, what this does versus what that does, and that just comes with experience. So, like, start working in it as cheaply as you can, and then, like, expand when you feel like you've outgrown your material, and, like, and you'll feel that, like, as you get more experience, you'll feel when, like, your setup is starting to limit you.
I guess I'll go next. At the beginning, when I started doing, because I think the most expensive stuff are, like, sound libraries, right? And so when I started doing film, I started just using the ones in Logic. And so then I made a list of the goal sound libraries that I really wanted. And I still have that. I put the list there. And so I use that as when I'm, like, writing a commission or things like that. I try to buy at least one thing or every year, but I use it also, like, to make me, like, sometimes, you can get a little lazy on commissions. And so you need something to get you, like, okay, so I really want that sound library. Okay. So in every commission, I try to save a little bit to build my sound libraries, and that's how I've been building it up, and it helps to get you there.
Yeah, I dig all that. I mean, I think everybody said you need to take advantage of what you have. Use your tools, perfect your craft. I believe Rock said it. If you don't have no good ideas or something like that, no matter what equipment you have, what I'm saying, you can have whatever the most expensive stuff ever, but if you're not really perfecting your craft, listening to different people who do what you do, and just really just honing in on your craft, it's never not gonna make a difference. So I say that's the most important thing. We'd always write something. I know it's time consuming, until we really get the ability to have all the different stuff that we had. Justin, I've been like you too, man. When I have nothing. I feel like all the musicians, I feel like most of us have been there, so, and it just really makes you appreciate, the music for itself. And then when you're able to put all that stuff together, I got 2 kids now, what I'm saying? I can't slack. I ain't got no space to really mess around. So, stuff like that really force you and really whip you into shape and to really take advantage of the stuff that you have, whether it be free or not. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a blessing for sure. So thank you, Justin, for that.
Yeah, go ahead, Roc.
Oh no, I was just also say like sometimes like the limitations of like what you have is also what breeds creativity. Is like how can I make thing produce the thing that I want. And you also hear stories of like the way that people started out. Like just 2 examples, like Ryan Ike, who's a video game composer. He did like Gunpoint and I forget what else. But he started on like those white plastic MacBooks and Logic, and that's all he had. And he would just like bounce tracks to like finish the track. And the computer would crash, like if he had like more than 10 tracks or something. And Darren Korb, who was the composer and sound designer for Transistor and Hades, and I was like, he started with just like an SM58 in a closet with an amp, like recording into like Audacity. Like that's like you don't need fancy stuff to produce. What's more important is that you do produce.
That's a great way to say it, because I feel like so many times we're like, oh, I can't start until I have whatever, which kind of leads me to the idea of opportunities and how we build our way in this career, which is I don't want to say cutthroat, but it is very competitive and it's difficult and it takes a lot of time. That whole 10,000 hour thing is kind of real. And like speaking to the libraries, I certainly have Spitfire libraries that I don't know how to use, because I've spent a lot of time in other ones, and I'm sure we all have. So let's talk about getting into this field, making those opportunities. And we're thinking on a budget, we're thinking about our other responsibilities. Where do you get started? And right here we have this amazing kind of scope of film, video games, live theater, sound design, sound art, faculty teaching, and recording artist and performer. So let's cover all that for anybody who would be watching. Where do I go? Where do I get started when nobody's coming to my door and asking me, to do a new composition?
I can start. I would say, like, for example, I'm still a very shy person. I hate talking in public, like I'm like a very introvert person, but I learned after I graduated that that was not going to get me anywhere. I was afraid of sending my music to competitions. I was afraid of, I was like, oh, what are they going to say? But then I learned the hard way. I was like, I need to put myself out there. So as soon as I started sending my stuff to like opportunities and actually talking to people, I started getting the opportunities. So it's all about marketing. You have to market yourself, even if you don't like it. Putting yourself out there. At the beginning, you might have to do, and I know it sucks, but you really have to not charge too much money. I guess at first in my career, I did a lot of free stuff to build my portfolio. And even though it was kind of sad because, I worked really hard on it and I needed the money. Sometimes, that it is what it is. But then I started getting opportunities and more connections and things like this. And I'm still trying to build, more connection and things like that. But yeah, for sure, you cannot be introverted. If you're an introvert, try your best to get yourself out there.
I'll go next. I agree 100% with what Edna just said. I came out of college. I went to school for performance. Piano performance, jazz piano performance, and it ain't easy. It's definitely not easy at all. So I'd say perfect your craft. I mean, you work on your craft, and your time will come. That's what I say. So you work on whatever you do, whether it be composing, performing, whatever you do. And then I was blessed to have some different opportunities, and be confident in what you do. I'll say that's what I say. Also, be confident in your work and really take time and spend time with it. I've never really had many opportunities really to write compositions, as opposed to except for a couple years, starting a couple years ago. I got asked to do a couple commissions, and and I got asked to do a film actually before COVID, like a film score, which is really something that really took me outside of my comfort zone. So you got to be willing to do stuff that's outside of your comfort zone. At the same time, I think that's one thing that you got to do too. And that really opened my eyes and just really opened, I can do more than just performing music. I love performing. I love doing stuff, but that just really opened my eyes. Like, I can do more than that. And then from that point on, different stuff just started to align into place, fall into place. But I say most importantly, just perfect your craft and be confident in yourself, and just develop a good work ethic. So that's what I say for sure.
I would also say that, like, I can't speak for anyone else here, but I struggle a lot with imposter syndrome and insecurity and feeling like I don't deserve to be here and stuff like that. Like, so since I teach a lot, since I give a lot of lectures, I project confidence, but like inside it's not there, right? Like, I mean, I try, like I work really hard on myself emotionally and I try to get there, but I guess the point is, like, if you're feeling like you're alone in that way, you're definitely not. Like, some of the most accomplished professionals I've met have a tough time with it too. And it's okay. Like, you don't have to be this like unshakable person. Like, I know this is a totally weird reference, but I really love the Into the Spider-Verse movie, if anyone's seen it. And one of the reasons I love that movie so much, and I always get emotional watching it, is like Miles is afraid to jump off this building. He's scared, right? That's why his hand like sticks to the glass, because his hand's like, he can't unstick from the glass when he's nervous, but he jumps anyway. And he's just like, I'm going to do it anyway. And that's what makes him so heroic, is like, man, this guy's like afraid he's going to die and he's just going to jump off anyway. And that kind of thing like really helped me, seeing that kind of thing. It's weird to get so much inspiration from like a cartoon, but yeah, I love that movie. So I think about that kind of stuff all the time. Like, just I guess if I had like one piece of advice, it'd be bet on yourself. Give yourself the chance. And I still struggle with that. So I'm not trying to stand here like, oh, and I have that mastered. Like, I still have a hard time. I have a few tracks that I'm scared to put out and I need to just do it already. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely an introvert as well, and still also deal with imposter syndrome. And I think it's super common. As an artist, there are other friends who are composers, sound designers, same thing. Like, everybody deals with it. Like, you're definitely not alone. And going out there and like meeting people and putting yourself out there is like a huge part of like getting work, which is the unfortunate reality. And it's uncomfortable, but you kind of have to do it. It doesn't mean that you have to become an extrovert. It just means like, go and make friends, like go and find people that you like and like talk to them and like try to be friends. And it gets easier over time. Like, it's never going to be like super comfortable, especially if you're an introvert, like, not gonna lie. But it does become easier, and then you have that experience to fall back onto. It's like, oh, I didn't die. I can go and talk to a person. um and so yeah, so for me, like, that was a huge part of like how I was able to get work in live theater, is just like showing up and like talking to people and letting people know that, like, oh, I do sound, oh, I do music. And then eventually like somebody's like, hey, we got this project, would you like to work on it? Like, and that's sort of like that is networking. It's just like going and meeting friends and letting people know what you do. It's not necessarily, doesn't have to be like this, like I have to meet somebody right now who will give me a gig. Like that causes you to be nervous and that gets you to tense up. And then actually makes it harder. So like if you just show up and like try to make friends and like talk to people, be a person, that that will help ease the nerves a little bit, and then also make you feel a little bit more natural. I also like really hated social media, but that kind of forced, like the pandemic forced me to get into it, just to, you know, continue having a presence and having people be able to just see what I do and like know that I exist. And posting on social media is something that I still feel uncomfortable with. But again, it's just a means to an end, and it's just like letting people know that you exist is a huge part of like getting work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything you guys said, I think is 110% true, because I think we all deal with, and like, this is just kind of fun. I mean, this is networking right here. And obviously like Jake and Andy and the folks from the art project who are putting this together so that composers and musicians can be together is amazing. But like Angelo and Justin and I have known each other for 15 plus years, and we've only worked with each other a handful of times, at least us individually. I know you guys were together down in Arizona, and Edna and I are meeting for the first time today, but I can't stress enough like how important it is to just be a cool person, be a good person, and maintain friends, and not be that needy asshole who like kind of stirs the pot, right? Like, I know we're gonna run out of time here, but I just want to talk a little bit about the Spitfire audio competition when, you know, somebody won the competition of like 11,000 entrants, and a ton of people were really upset about it and said a lot of nasty things online about this one person's composition. Like that just deteriorates the scene so much. Like there's enough space for all of us, absolutely. One thing I want to touch on, and I like definitely want to open it up if anybody there in the audience wants to ask a question or anything like that, please jump in. But off days, you know, if are there any questions? Actually, let's ask that. Does anybody have anything they want to ask? I see somebody reaching and or typing.
Yeah, you can type if you're
True.
timid with talking. You can put it in the chat.
Yeah. Okay, if not, then I just want to talk about off days. We have about 5 minutes left here. What do you do in your off day? And I'll start that off with when I'm like sitting at the computer, I'm like, I don't want to fucking compose at all. Maybe I'll just like organize my libraries or like clean out my, you know, template, things like that. So what do you do on the days when your creative process is lower or your creative energy is lower?
I live near the Moog factory. I like to go to their showroom floor and just play their synths. I love analog synths. If I can't get there, I'll just download a new free synth and just listen to the sound and just like explore it. And then that usually makes me feel like, oh man, I love synthesizers. And then I want to compose again.
I try to edit scores because, you know, even though that's like a pain in the, I hate editing, right? Making the score pretty. So because, you know, there's not too much time, that's what I do on the off days when I can't compose, and then go out and eat. Those are my hobbies.
I'll
Go
go.
ahead.
So practice. I mean, I'll run through some tunes. Be something that you know, always gotta stay on top of that, practicing. And then when, you know, I got two kids in the house running around all the time, so spending a couple minutes with them will make me want to come back up here and do some work. So that's about it.
I'll say like as a freelancer, it's really easy to like just work. So a couple years ago, I had like was super burned out, and then had some downtime. I didn't know what to do with myself. So like I made a priority to find hobbies that I could do when I needed to relax or like just didn't want to work. And so for me, I go to the rock climbing gym, and I also do Lindy Hop dancing.
Outside hobbies are so critical. Which Angelo's hobby is kids. That's great.
Hey, I love sports too. I love to watch sports, and I love to eat too. So there you go.
We have a question here. I'll read it out. Let's say you want to compose and you've dedicated a time to do so, but you're not getting the sound that resonates with you. What do you do to get out of it? And would it be merely taking breaks? Like, how do you get there?
Sometimes I think one of the things I do is give myself permission to not get that sound. Like maybe I'll find a different sound. What if I find something else that I never knew I could do before? Now, if it's a commission and they ask for like, hey, you got to write in this certain style, well, then it's like, okay, then I'll kind of do what Angelo does, where all right, well, let me dive into these other tunes. Like I was trying to write something that was kind of like more in the funk wheelhouse at one stage, which is way out of my comfort zone. Um, and I just went and listened to like a bunch of 70s like Parliament and stuff like that. That really helped. I tried to play it at home, not very successfully, but I tried to play it at home, and then I kind of got the tune written, but I gave myself permission to like not succeed that day. And I was like, okay, it's fine. I'm not getting the sound right now. Maybe what I'll do is I'll play all these other tunes that sound similar to the sound I want, and I'll just try to get it that way. And I'll work hard on learning these other things, and let's see what I can do tomorrow.
I would say like so yeah, like sort of like what Justin's saying, like sometimes you can give yourself permission to produce garbage. Like you can write stuff and like completely hate it and just throw it away. Like that's okay. Like you still showed up and you did the work. Like what's important is that if you schedule the time to show up and do something, because like if you're going to be a working professional, like you just have to be consistent about doing something. Like it doesn't actually have to be the final product, but don't just like shrug it off. There are degrees to this. Like if you like really need the mental break, or like you're just really getting super frustrated, then definitely like take a 5-minute break, come back and start again. I would say the second part to this about like just getting over writer's block. I think the more you do the work, then you start to develop ways of like producing stuff even when you're not inspired. So a huge thing for me, so even after school, I took 7 years of private lessons, because I wasn't getting work in the beginning, and I knew that if I wasn't doing something, then I would just get worse and worse and worse. So part of that was like to keep me accountable, and part of it was like I felt like I still needed to get better. And sort of through that process, then I developed like ways of starting compositions that could help me get through something. So I could say like, I don't, like you kind of like, as an example, it's like, I need something sad. It needs to be slow. And it needs to be like ambient. And it's like, okay, so like, that's like synth, maybe like a minor chord, maybe it changes chords every like 2 bars, and then you like start with that. So like it's hard to start from a blank template, so you come up with some parameters to limit what you need, and then you sort of like improvise in that, or like just say like, okay, I know that this sounds close to what I need, I'll just start there, even if it's like not exactly what I like right now. And then once you get started, then you the momentum kind of builds on itself. But
there's a lot to be said about like, don't forget your training, like you're saying, and I had to look this up because I'm such a bad student of music, but right, like our inversion, retrograde, inversion, and prime forms, 12 tone composing, there's no problem with taking your current melody that sucks and doing those basic flips on it to see, to try it out, like Justin's saying, and see where it goes.
Yeah, just try something, just start somewhere.
What I do is, I think someone told me a long time ago, I just can't remember what, because, it's really frustrating being in, one whole day trying to compose, and then it's just garbage, right? And you don't like it. And then you get all frustrated, and then, you suck, blah, 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 all your voices in your head. But then if you think the other way. You can be like, okay, well, it's not wasting your time. You're picking the things that you actually don't want for that sound. So at least, you know, you're getting those away from finally finding that sound that you like. So then just think of that. It's a helpful way to get to the actual sound that you want.
Absolutely. Well, I want to be respectful of their time because I know folks have some teaching and other work to do today, but I really want to thank Edna, Angelo, Roc, Justin for being here. You can find all of them on most social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and then also their websites. Literally, you can just Google their names and find tons of different works that they've done. So thank you to the Art Project Festival. Thank you for the question. And thank you to you for being just fabulous people. Awesome to just like hang out with you. So thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you guys.
Yeah. And Jake, I guess we'll pass it back to you. Thanks so much.